Okay, as promised, I was going to do a third video in a week. And it's only because I may not be doing one um, or try not to do one in the upcoming weeks. But I'll just get into it. Yeah, I still haven't been feeling that well. I stopped taking Mestinon. I don't think I really ever needed it. And so I'm going to see if maybe that was an issue. Um, and see if what happens if having stopped taking it for a couple of weeks. Maybe it was doing more harm than good because I don't really have POTS or preload failures, so it didn't seem like it was necessary to take it. Um, so so vlog 26. I did a Reddit AMA on MECFS. So an AMA is an Ask Me Anything, and surprisingly, a fair amount of people actually asked me questions, which I was surprised of them doing. So basically, I said that I have a debilitating chronic illness that has no known biomarkers and no FDA approved therapies. Ask me anything. And the description was I have a disease called myalgic encephalomyelitis on the quality of life scale, ranked somewhere between end stage renal failure and cancer. And I guess that maybe is more for people who are a little bit more severe. For me, it's more like, I don't know, I'm just sick every day. This disease can range from mild to very severe, and then there are even gradients, obviously in between there. Don't let it fool you. Most people who are mild don't work. Myself, in fact, 75 to 80% can't work at all. It is like long COVID. However, it has been extremely underfunded, under-researched, and psychologized by the medical community. It is characterized by PEM, post-exertional malaise. There are other names for it too, like PENE. But anyways, meaning I'm running on about 6 to 10% of the energy you use, which I think is about right. Um, yeah, I would say that's about right. It doesn't mean I'm a 10 on the Bell scale. It just means that I'm probably running on about that much battery. This is your chance to talk to someone with a disease known as the living death, which it is known as that. MECF has been called the greatest medical scandal of the 20th or 20th century, and I would have to agree with it. So the first question someone asked me was, how quickly did your symptoms set in, and do you think there was a triggering event? And I said, I started noticing that my sleep was non existent all of a sudden. Like I literally couldn't fall asleep and could only sleep maybe an hour at a time. That lasted for several months. And then when I was moving boxes into my apartment, I had what we call a crash. All my energy basically left my body, and I was in bed for 2 weeks, unable to do anything. I wish I knew what my triggering event was. I actually don't know what it is. It could have been prolonged stress that lowered my immune system response or triggered it. I don't know. Most people claim they had EBV, mono, as their inciting event. For others, an accident or trauma, physical or otherwise. For me, I think it was a combination of stress and no sleep. And they said, wow, that's brutal. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. Have you checked out this AMA? And this AMA was for someone who has like fatal sleep insomnia or familial fatal sleep insomnia. Um, they describe a different illness, but the way you describe sleep is very similar. Yeah, and I said yes. So this is what I thought I originally had before I was sick. Actually, if you go to the insomnia subreddit, it's a lot of posts about people petrified they have it, but they shouldn't be, given it's mostly genetic, hence familial. However, there is something called Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease that is similar. These are all forms of dementia. The sleep issues usually come later after somebody notices behavioral differences. My sleep issues came first, which let me know something was probably off with my nervous system. Also, I've had this illness long enough where I'd most likely not be able to communicate to you coherently if I had FFI. If you have FFI, it's a form of dementia. It's not a sleep issue. It's characterized by that later on down the road. Um, yeah, but it's like a form. It's usually it's a form of it's a neurological disease. It's a form of dementia. It's just really scary because of the way it plays out. Um, then someone says, this one, this person was just talking about how they might have it. So I sort of just answered that, yeah, they could have a relapse remitting version of it because they had flares. This person asked, are there any clinical trials about it? Also, why do you think it is so understudied? And I said, There are very small studies, but none have yielded much, mostly because they were poorly designed and underfunded. And also, I think what I mean by that as well is that they they've poured so much money into other things, and they probably don't have a good idea yet of like what the disease even is. And you can't really design a study based off like a drug trial based off a disease that is so multifaceted. It's very difficult. It's a dynamic illness, and when you have a dynamic illness, you need to modify the way that you approach what would be considered standardization, standardized like uh, randomized control trials. Anyways, it's understudied because it's an insanely complex, multi-organ, multi-system disrupting illness. It's not like HIV, where when they found a biomarker, they could then target it, begin trialing, and get massive pharma funding. Also, it's been historically psychologized as a somatic disorder. That's a polite way of saying they gaslit everyone to think it's all in our heads. Not to make it political, but Dr. Fauci was a culprit in some of this in the 1980s. The disease then was called the yuppie flu, meaning they thought people were just layabouts trying to garner pity or not be productive. Then, because it does not have a lot of overlap with depression superficially, then because it does have a lot of overlap with depression superficially, psychiatrists took a crack at it and are still trying to find some mind-body connection that they never applied to any other illness. The final insult was prescribing exercise, particularly graded exercise therapy for people who get worse with physical exertion. Other illnesses benefit from exercise: Parkinson's, a broken leg, you're rehabbing, mental health issues, cardiac problems, even certain autoimmune conditions. And also because these were the cheapest options. There's also the issue of the fact that we can't advocate for ourselves in the same way other illnesses can. It is too costly to our own health. We don't have a Larry Kramer who was an advocate for HIV, and then I linked them his famous like speech where he's like calling it, it's a plague, it's a fucking plague, 40 million infections is a fucking plague. And he says I said we're hidden from society because many of us are housebound or bedbound. People saw how HIV ravaged their family members, friends, coworkers. They made entire movies about it. We just disappear into the social darkness. Our allies are each other, and we can't go out and march or protest because we literally don't have the energy. And this person is just commenting back and forth about CFS. Yes, and this person commenting with the PACE trial. This person is just commenting about how someone they knew passed away from it. This person's telling me about a podcast. This person this person's actually asking me like how I got diagnosed. So like, how long did it take you, and what steps did you take to get to the correct diagnosis? How does having that diagnosis impact or change your lifestyle and mental state? My psychiatrist has suggested I look into this myself, but due to 20 years of mixed diagnosis and mistreatment for a separate health condition, I'm pretty jaded. Where is my answer to this? Interesting. Oh, so here it is. Okay, so it took me a few months. I was very fortunate because I live in a state with a lot of doctors who just happened to work in ME/CFS, and it was during the pandemic, so they were seeing a lot of these kinds of cases. But I had to push them very hard to make them understand I wasn't just tired, because there were articles going around the lockdowns that the lockdowns had made people lethargic or deconditioned, and so they wanted to dismiss my symptoms. I said, don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them gaslight you. How it impacts my life: I can no longer work. I'm relying on my mother, sister, etc., other family members for help doing daily tasks. I can no longer drive. I have light sensitivities, noise sensitivities, hence the glasses, hence my noise, my earplugs. My sleep is horrendous. I never wake up feeling rested. Usually I feel worse. All my relationships have basically become long distance. I can't just go and do something on a whim. I have to carefully plan it. Mentally, it's very difficult. You're alive, but you're not living. So you have to make do with what the little that is left. Sometimes it's not very much. Also, the fact that there's no treatments on the horizon is very scary. We're talking something like 10 to 15 years off to the future for a realistic treatment, not a cure. I've already lost my entire 30s to this. I have to prepare to do so for my 40s. Not quite 40 yet, but basically I've lost my entire 30s to this. ME/CFS is presently a diagnosis of exclusion, so they ruled out a lot of things before they told me that that this was the source of my PEM. No other illness has the symptoms that I'm aware of. You might have to go outside the traditional route to something like a holistic doctor or integrated medicine, if only for a diagnosis. I wouldn't buy into anything they're selling. Depending on where you live, there's also centers in Utah and California that would be suitable for getting a diagnosis. The Bateman Horne Center and Stanford Medicine are two those places. And then this person just had solidarity because they also have it. If you had the option to do medical suicide and choose when to end your life, would you? I do not have the option, but I've known many in the community who choose this route. We are 6 times more likely to choose suicide than the average population. It's a good question. If I were severe enough, I'd probably lean towards yes. Right now, I'm trying to avoid getting there, and I am. How much longer is your life expectancy? Did the doctors give you a timeline? Are there any possible clinical trials for you? The median age is 56, and that's true, but that's because of the high number of people who check out, commit suicide. I could live a normal lifespan. I know some members of my support group in their 70s who have had this since the early 80s. There are clinical trials, but they're mostly for long COVID. The problem is they're not large enough studies, and most people can't even tolerate medication in the first place. Thank you for being so open about this. I hope you don't mind me asking more questions. Of course, if you find me annoying, just ignore me. But what are your symptoms that make the disease so miserable? As I said, no problem. I did this because most people don't know about it. What probably makes this illness most miserable is it robs you of your identity because everything you used to do, you can not only do partially or not at all. For example, I used to be a runner and a cycler. Now I can walk around the house a few times, but that's it. I used to read a book a week. I've not finished a book in 3 years. I worked in academia and now I'm reliant on disability, SSDI. I had a girlfriend, that's over. The inability to generate energy and worse, to be punished for expending it is pretty cruel. For example, just looking at my laptop screen is going to cause me to have a headache and neck aches tomorrow, and that did happen. I have no clue why, but MECF causes screen intolerance. Thus, as someone who was a cinephile, I can't even watch my favorite films or TV shows to relax. There is no relaxing, it's just moments of unpleasantness with some brief respite, and then you do it all over again. I appreciate your interest, though, and for the thoughtful questions. And then this person was also just someone who else has MECFS. And this person says, I have severe ME. Thanks for talking about it. What age did you get this? I said, I'm not entirely sure. And that's true. I really don't know. I have had symptoms that might have been indicative of this illness for about 6 years. So that was when I was 33, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 37. I'm now 39. What do you think would have caused it? Combination of long-term stress and years of poor sleep, all things which can weaken your immune system. 65 to 75% of cases have a known onset that is usually a virus or bacterial infection. However, the theory about other onsets is latent viruses like forms of herpes everyone has in their body activate, disrupt your mitochondria, which flips a switch that disallows your immune system to go back to its default mode. That's my best guess since there's no viral onset for me that I know of. This person says their mother had it. This person says they had long COVID. And this person says, how is it different from fibromyalgia diagnosis by exclusion? And then I just said, is the 2-day cardio pulmonary exercise test. Do you dream often? I said, all too often. My dreams are not only vivid, but they're terrifying. I dread going to sleep because for 30 years I used to just go to bed and wake up and couldn't remember my dreams at all. Now I can tell you every detail. I also have horrible sleep paralysis. Now, do I dream in other ways? Yes, I dream of traveling and recovering enough to visit Japan and my family I've never seen, to visit the fishing village my grandfather is from. Thank you for your question. And this person asked me what's the best way to support their friend who has MECFS. I said, educate yourself as much as possible about the illness. Advocate for her if possible. There is always fundraisers or volunteer work or for different months for ME. We cannot do it on our own because of how limited we are. We are already helping. You are already helping by taking an interest. And I said, thanks for your response. I'll look into fundraising around MECFS and volunteer stuff. I was also thinking of running a marathon next summer. Do you know of any charities I can sponsor? And I said the Open Medicine Foundation and the ME Association. This person wants to know how I was feeling, and not in the physical sense. And I said, depends on the day. When I remember how much I've lost and how close I was to having a normal life, it hurts a lot. When I was more stable, things were okay, meaning I was not in constant grief. But as time goes on, there's a lot of mourning. It is not like any other illness because the valleys for some can last decades. That is a frightening thought. I have no other diagnoses, oddly. Most people have POTS, fibromyalgia, MCAS, dysautonomia, IBS, etc. I have some form of undiagnosed intracranial hypertension, which is true, most likely, and severe sleep disorder. And then they asked me, I have my thyroid levels checked. Yes, I have. And they said, what kind of pharmaceuticals have you had? They try, or do you do amphetamines help at all? I take something called low-dose naltrexone. I take clonazepam, propranolol, mestinon. Well, I stopped taking it. Famotidine, and I take about 30 supplements. So I take like 60 to 70 pills a day. And I told her the issue with stimulants is that like sometimes it can give you like fake energy. Yeah, and so that's pretty much it. Yeah, this was a little longer than I wanted to be, but like there was a lot of like other questions and back and forth answer kind of stuff that I um, I said, and other comments that I made, but they weren't really like relevant. But I try. So I that was like I hadn't seen any AMAs from MECFS, and it actually did drain me a lot because like you would just get like messages, and I was trying to answer them the best as I can, and I was just trying to educate as many people as I can, and I may do another one down the line sometime or something like that or whatever. I wish we can get more media coverage on this or more anything, but it's very difficult, obviously, because no one gives a flying fuck about this illness, and that sucks. But I'll leave the link in the description of the video if you want to look at it, and maybe I'll post this video in the CFS subreddit, and I'll see you next time.